So if you feel frustrated right now that you are not where you want to be in life, you feel stuck. It could be at a job, it could be in a town or a state or a country. It could be in a relationship. It could be in anything. You know, I think we can all relate that we have been there. But this is something that I've learned in my life, and I want to share this with you. And this is something I have to remind myself of as well, is that two things. Sometimes God puts us in situations, or maybe we put our own self in a situation, but he's going to find a way to turn it around. Excuse my voice, I lost it a bit. He's going to find a way to turn it around where it's going to prepare you for something in the future. Prepare you for something good, or even another challenge, right? It's going to equip you with that. The other part of that is that challenge that you're in right now, where you feel stuck, where you feel frustrated, where you feel annoyed, where you maybe feel confined, use that as fuel to say, okay, what can I do to position myself so I can get out of this? Or I know I'm going to get out, but how do I position myself to make sure I don't end up here again? I'll share a personal experience with you. When my parents are from the Caribbean. I'm from New Jersey. I grew up between the Caribbean and New Jersey. And then as a teenager, I went permanently back to New Jersey. And in a lot of Caribbean households, you know, sometimes you go away and your parents stay behind in the Caribbean. And so my parents, we left the U.S., came down to the Caribbean, and then I went back to the U.S. And I was not able to, I had to stay with different people at different periods of my life throughout my childhood, or my adolescence, I should say. And there were some experiences that were great, and there were some experiences that were not so great. And I remember this one time staying with this family. Overall, things went okay, but there were times where towards the end, it got very uncomfortable for me. And, you know, I don't think anyone could really understand unless you've been in those shoes where you are a child, you're a minor, you know, even if you're an adolescent, you're still a minor, and you're living in someone's house and they're not happy with you, right? It's a very, very uncomfortable feeling. And to make it worse, you're in a country where your parents are not there, right? So you're really, really on your own. And I got through it. And what that equipped me for, though, when I look back now, I'm 39, and I look back at, you know, really bad relationship that I was in. I looked at a job that was extremely stressful, where people would like just break down crying or just pick up and leave, you know. I look at these instances and people would say, Naila, you're so strong. You handle this so well. You know, you don't seem fazed. And what I would say is that I feel like God used, you know, those times where I was alone as an adolescent, and basically had to console myself and make myself feel comfortable and safe, and remind myself that this is temporary. You know, those are skills that I learned because of those hard times that I went through. You know, I remember sometimes I would share my story with people when I was younger. They'd be like, oh my gosh, you're here by yourself, your parents are not here, or you're staying by people. You know, they would be like mind blown. And I'm like, I'm okay. You know, it's not until I got older, I'm a mom myself now, where I'm like, I couldn't fathom my children being in that position. However, instead of being stuck in that woe is me mentality, what I did is I said, okay, what can I get out of this? You know, and I think that's so powerful. And we all have to remind ourselves that even though I'm sharing this with you now, you know, even the challenges that I'm going through now in my life, we're always going to have some challenges that we have to maneuver, but we have to remind ourselves it's temporary. It's temporary. What do I need to learn from this so it's not in vain? What does God want me to take out of this? What lessons does he want me to take out of this? And what can I do now to position myself to make sure I'm not in that situation again? You know, one of the things, I've always been pretty much of a focused, you know, young woman and into my adulthood. But one of the things that fueled me even more to make sure that I stayed on the right path, you know, even though I didn't have parents hanging over me saying, Naila, do this, do good in school, get a career. those experiences made sure that I did not mess up. I didn't have time to mess up, because I knew I wanted to be in a position where I can provide for myself, and I never had to live with other people again. So I took college very seriously. I went back to grad school. I got my career on track. I wanted to make sure that I got myself educated. I got my career on track to make sure that I never had to depend on other people again, so that was the fuel. So if there's something I want you to get away from this message today, is that if you are feeling stuck, if you are feeling frustrated, if you are feeling confined, maybe you don't even know what the next step is, take a step back and say, okay, I know this is temporary. Temporary could be a month, temporary could be a year, right? But this is temporary. Maybe I can even shorten it if I reposition myself. I need to do things maybe different. I need to maybe surround myself with new people, with new ideas. I need to reposition myself to make sure I can get out of this and make sure I don't end up back here again. And then the other question from a spiritual aspect is, God, what do you want me to get out of this? Maybe you didn't put me here, God. Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't. Regardless, though, what do you want me to get out of this? What skills and character do you want me to develop out of this? Right? And how do you want this to fuel me to get me to my next level? So don't let your struggle go in vain. We're human. We have emotions. Things are going to hurt. Things are going to bother us. Right? So I'm not saying you don't feel. We're going to feel. Right? But how do I make sure it doesn't go in vain? All right? I love you. God loves you. Let's do this thing called life together. Let's do well at it, and let's win at it. All right? I see you soon.